edition of the Sportsline Podcast, and we certainly appreciate you hanging out with us. Now, although we love to feature athletes, sports executives, and broadcasters who represent or are getting it done in Southern Ontario, today, due to the Olympics and Paralympics in Paris, we've opened up our scope to the national sports scene. Getting his start on the largely popular Sports Page program in Vancouver, this individual took his producing and broadcast talents to Toronto for a long stint at Sportsnet. Since then, John Horn has moved on to become one of the country's top sports television and radio professionals on and off the camera. Although he's covered everything from the NFL to the NBA, this individual has worked 7 Olympic Games, with this year's Games in Paris being his first exclusively covering his true love, tennis. Let's visit Paris and bring him in from Roland Garros. It's John Horn. How are you, partner?
Bonjour, Bubs. Comment ça va?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'm not going to fake the funk here with the French. But I'm certainly...
as much as you're going to get. That's the most you're going to get out of me in French. So that's about it.
Hey, tell you, I'm going to start off with this a simple question. You've been the Olympics and now the Paralympics, which are starting very soon. What is Paris like as an Olympic city?
I mean, there's some great tradition here. I mean, we talk about the Olympics and the history that it has with Greece, obviously. Paris hosted the Games in 1924, so this is the 100-year anniversary of hosting the Games. So a pretty special moment for everybody here in Paris, and I thought they did a great job with the Olympic Games. I thought it was really well organized. Some of the venues were spectacular. They did a nice job in all different aspects. I thought the medals looked really nice. I thought that the competitions were really good. There were some great stories, some good Canadian stories, some good stories from other countries as well. And so we're looking to parlay that into the Paralympics as well. There's lots of great stories here from the Paralympics. I'm doing wheelchair tennis. When you see some of these athletes, Bubs, it's really impressive to see what they can do. The inspirational stories, the strength that you see in wheelchair tennis, just the upper body strength that you need to wheel on the court. It's pretty cool. So I'm glad to be here. This is the third event I guess I've done involving wheelchair tennis before. I've done Special Olympic tennis, para games before in the past, but this is the first time I've done tennis and para tennis on site at an Olympic Games. So it's pretty cool, and there are lots of great stories, and I hope it gets the attention that it deserves. It's a great city to host it, and I think the ticket sales are going to be great too. They've already been saying at the tennis that they're about 80% full already for most of the courts, which is nice. And this stadium we're at right now, Philippe Chatrier seats 15,000. There's another 9,000 on Suzanne Leglon, so I think it's going to go really well, and I'm glad that Paris has done a nice job showcasing the Olympic Games and now the Paralympic Games to the world.
And for those, I know this is really nothing new to you. You've covered the French Open for many years. You've covered major Grand Slam tournaments. Like, you're standing at Roland Garros right now. We're getting a good look of it right now. I mean, does this bring any special memories to you when you go to that clay court, the home of clay?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you right now. I'm concerned about my shoes because there's a lot of dirt and a lot of clay around here, and I'm wearing white shoes. So I'm a little concerned. No, but to be honest with you, yeah, I mean, it's a spectacular venue. Obviously, it's one of the meccas of tennis, along with Wimbledon. There's so many others, but the French Open really, for clay court tennis, is the mecca, with all due respect to Rome and Monte Carlo and Barcelona, who've had storied tournaments as well. But this is the third Grand Slam of the year, and I think it's really cool and unique that, again, like in London in 2012, where the Olympics were on the grass and they transformed all of Wimbledon into an Olympic event, and it didn't look like Wimbledon at all. It's the same here with Paris. You can see over my shoulder that Paris 2024, you see all the blue around. Usually at Roland Garros, that's brown and green, so it's a completely different look for the players, and they've done an excellent job here of making it a comfortable place for the wheelchair athletes and the Olympians as well. And it's a storied court. I mean, there've been so many great matches on this court. You think of how many times Nadal has won the French Open. I think it's 14. There's a huge statue made of Nadal not far from where I'm standing. Alcaraz winning the French Open, Gustavo Kuerten winning it a couple times. Federer has won it. Djokovic has won it, and just recently Alcaraz. So, I mean, there's so many other great stories. Iga Swiatek's won it 3 times too. So it's a very special court. It's a very unique court. It's a little different for wheelchair tennis because the wheelchairs need to be a little bit more firm on the court so they don't water it as much. And it's a little more difficult for the wheelchair athletes to maneuver around than it would be on the hard courts and the grass. But they're doing a great job of looking after the court, and the players have all said that it's playing really well, at least on Philippe Chatrier. So yeah, I mean it's a great stadium. I mean, to be standing here, roof's open right now, which is nice. They do have a retractable roof now. It's you sometimes pinch yourself when you get to be at these places and have these moments. And certainly I think the athletes will feel the same way.
Let's go back to the Olympics for a second here, because there was a couple of moments, and you just listed off some of the great names in tennis, and when it's becoming arguable right now if Novak Djokovic is the greatest male singles tennis player of all time. He's won multiple Grand Slams. I think he's up to 23 or whatever the case is. Like, Novak Djokovic had a reaction after winning the gold medal in men's singles that I've never seen him have before. I'm sure you saw that. Why did he react that way?
I mean, I think the Olympic Games to some athletes means more than it does to others. I think in some sports it means more than it does to others. I think anybody who has the opportunity to compete in the Olympic Games, it's a special moment. I think any athlete will say that. But I think in terms of what it means to Djokovic, representing his country in the sport of tennis has always been a big deal. Whether it's been in Davis Cup, ATP Cup, any events that involve his country. Tennis players are individuals first. They have a country and a flag beside their name. But really in tennis, they're individuals. They just happen to be from a country. There are not that many moments and opportunities where a player plays a sport in tennis and represents their country. So I think, he's won the Davis Cup before. That meant a lot to him. He's won multiple Grand Slams, as you just listed off. He's had a lot of achievements, great moments. There's so many. You could spend half an hour just talking about how many events he's won and why he's won it and how great they've been. But to win a gold medal was something that he had never done. He'd won a bronze medal in Beijing. He had lost in previous Olympics in early rounds. And I think it really bothered him that he wasn't able to get that gold medal. And this was almost probably going to be his last chance, being 37 years old. And just, how difficult it had been. He hurt his knee in the French Open, pulled out of the French Open, went to Wimbledon, got all the way to the final, lost to Alcaraz quite handily. And then he went through the draw here at the French Open on a court that he plays at Chatrier almost every match. I think he did at the Olympics because he's either been the number one seed or defending champion or what have you. And I just think that he put a great match together and a great week together. I even thought that when he was scheduled to play Alcaraz in the final that, I thought he had a chance, but I didn't think he was going to win. And he played some outstanding tennis at moments and won in straight sets and tie breaks. And I think it was almost like the weight of the last thing that he needed to accomplish in tennis had come off of his shoulders. And that solidified him officially, whether people agreed or not before this, that he was officially the greatest of all time in men's tennis and probably in professional tennis overall. It was almost as if he won for his country, so that was a big moment. He's now the greatest of all time. That was a big moment. He won a gold medal. That was a big moment. Has he accomplished everything in sport now? Yes. And it all came down at that moment. And that was why he reacted the way he did. His family was in the crowd. His kids were in the crowd. His wife was there. People from his country were surrounded the court. There were a lot of Serbian fans here. To see him on the ground, with his hand shaking and trembling, that was shaking and trembling of joy, not because he was upset. So I think it all culminated in that moment. And to do it on this court where he's won slams before, I think was a special moment. And, it was certainly a cool moment for tennis. And now he's got his own gold bag, Bubs. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a gold bag that he's had made up by either Head or somebody. I can't remember who made it up, but and he's walking into the U.S. Open in the last Grand Slam of the year with a gold bag now. So he's made it, I think.
Well, the Serbs certainly got a great feeling, and it was certainly, I think, a real warm feeling. We don't normally pay a lot of attention to doubles, especially mixed doubles. But what happened with Gabby Dabrowski and Felix Auger-Aliassime with that bronze medal, that was a real thumbs up, I thought, for Canadian tennis and a great moment for us.
Yeah, it was a great moment. I was lucky I got to see some of those matches. I watched the bronze medal match, and it was nice to see because Canada hadn't won a medal in tennis since 2000 when Daniel Nestor and Sébastien Leroux won the gold in Sydney in doubles. So it was nice to have that moment. Felix had another shot at a bronze, wasn't able to win it in singles, but still to get that moment in mixed doubles, is a very cool moment. And I think Gabby Dabrowski, for all that she's done, I always say that the doubles players never get the attention that the singles players do, whether it was Grant Connell back in the days or Daniel Nestor from a men's perspective. They achieved some great moments in tennis, some of the best doubles players of all time. And, when we talk about tennis, just like we did here today, we're always talking about the singles players and Djokovic and Shapovalov and Felix and so forth and Bianca. And the doubles kind of takes a back seat. And it doesn't get the exposure. It's not on TV as much, but what Gabby Dabrowski has been able to do in women's tennis has been impressive. I mean, she's the number one seed with her partner, Erin Routliffe, who's the number one doubles player in the world. The fact that they've been able to have such a good run in such a short period of time. They won the U.S. Open last year. They got to the doubles final in Canada this year. They won a couple of other tournaments in between. So, it's a nice moment for her to win a bronze medal and to represent her country. And she's always been there at Billie Jean King Cup and Fed Cup before it was called Billie Jean King Cup. And, has always worn the Canadian colors with pride. And I think for her and Felix, it was a nice moment to have together. They hadn't played a lot of doubles before together. So for them to be able to do it and bring a medal home for Canada was pretty cool.
Over to the Paralympic Games right now, and just for a little history, not so much for who to look for as of yet, but the actual tennis as a sport in the Paralympics, is it a relatively new sport to the Paralympic Games?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going since 2004, I believe. I guess you would call it relatively new. I mean, wheelchair tennis has been going for quite some time. 1982, I believe it was France who first started off getting wheelchair tennis going. But it's had a cool. A good run, I should say. I mean, the fact that they're in all the Grand Slams, I think, is outstanding. I mean, they're not in the U.S. Open this year because of the Olympics. So unfortunate that both the U.S. Open and the Paralympics are going on at the same time. But I found it interesting. I was concerned because I read a couple of articles that the athletes weren't going to, the money that they earn at Grand Slams often funds them for a lot of the year, and that they weren't going to get money from the U.S. Open this year because they weren't having it. But it turns out that the U.S. Open pulled a really solid gesture and has actually pooled all the prize money that the players would have got at U.S. Open and is actually still giving it to the players, and they are distributing it out evenly amongst all the players. So it's a nice gesture from the U.S. Open to do that. So they're getting all their money and they're getting to compete for gold, silver, and bronze here in Paris. So I think that's a nice touch. But yeah, I mean, it's an impressive sport to watch, Bubs. I mentioned that earlier, and the fact that you're able to maneuver around a tennis court, in a wheelchair. It's a specially designed wheelchair for tennis. It's not your standard wheelchair. The wheels are sort of curved in a little bit, and there are a couple different rules. I mean, the sets are still the same. The net height is still the same. The difference is you get two balls. You get a 2-ball bounce instead of one, like you would in tennis. So that's really the only difference. And some of the athletes, the muscles. Anybody who who's a well-known wheelchair athlete. You think back to like when Rick Hansen was the man in motion around the world. The arms on Rick Hansen they were impressive. So when you see some of these wheelchair athletes and the strength that they have to wheel around and to hit the ball, and there's some players who really hit the ball hard and are really good players. And there's some players who won all the Grand Slams. Alfie Hewitt from Great Britain is an example of that. There's been some really good players over the years who've really competed at a high level. So it's fun to watch. Again, it's kind of like a sport, maybe like doubles. It doesn't get the attention that it probably should or maybe would like, but certainly it's getting more and more exposure than it ever has. So if you get the opportunity to watch some of the coverage, I'm sure there'll be some wheelchair tennis coverage in there. And hopefully Canada will bring back a medal. Robert Shaw's in the quad singles event. So maybe we'll see another medal coming home on the courts of Roland Garros.
Well, okay, you talk about the Canadian there. So when you say quad tennis, what does that mean to us newbies?
Yeah, well, it's different. I mean, there's 6 different categories here at the wheelchair tennis. There's singles and there's doubles, men's and women's, and then there's also quad singles and quad doubles. And what the difference it really is between the bunch, obviously singles is singles and doubles is doubles, but the difference between, say, wheelchair doubles, the open division, and the quad division is that there's usually a limb deficiency that one of the players actually has. So usually that means that a player has lost a full limb, and oftentimes, Bubs, it's pretty impressive that you'll see some of the players in the quad division actually playing with a racket taped to their hand because they don't have the shoulder mobility to actually move their hands. So that again makes it even more special when you see some of the players. So it can be different deficiencies that the players have, different limbs that they have lost or what have you. Could be arms, could be legs, but that's the difference between quad singles and the open division and the quad division. So that's what Robert Shaw is in, and he's a pretty good player. So I'd like to see him do well. He's got a tough draw. If he wins his first round match, he's got to play the number 2 seed. So there are a lot of really good Dutch wheelchair players, a lot of really good Japanese wheelchair players, and Great Britain seems to show well too. So I guess it boils down to a lot of it is funding and having the ability to play and what courts you can play on. But as I said, I emphasized it before, is that it's really inspiring to watch when you think every day of how some of these athletes, what they go through just to live a normal life day to day, and then you see them competing at an event like this at a high level at the Olympics. It's really cool.
John, let's switch things over to the U.S. Open at Flushing Meadows, because something happened yesterday which it blew my mind, and I was a little disappointed that we had 5 Canadians in one day, but 4 of them played on Tuesday at Flushing Meadow, and it was amazing to me that all of them lost. Should we be shocked here?
I mean, yes and no. No Canadians played on the first day, and then 5 of them played on the second day, and 4 of them lost. And the 4 that you figured should have won, and the one that ended up winning, you thought probably would have lost. So kind of backwards the way it all went. Look, it's been a tough bit of a run here for the Canadians in tennis, in singles especially. Felix Auger-Aliassime, Denis Shapovalov, Bianca Andreescu, Leilani Fernandez. It has not been a good year for any of them. They've really struggled to put runs together. That said, Bianca did get to one final. So did Leilani Fernandez got to a final. So did Felix. He got to a final. Felix was in Madrid on the clay. Bianca's, I believe, was in Berlin. No, it was in the Netherlands on grass. And then Leilani Fernandez was on Eastbourne and grass. So, good results. But certainly I think the problem is that when the Canadian players have had better results than that, where Felix Auger-Aliassime has gone to a semifinal at a Grand Slam, Denis Shapovalov has gone to a Wimbledon semifinal, and Leilani Fernandez has been a U.S. Open runner-up, and Bianca Andreescu has won the U.S. Open. Once that starts happening, then you start expecting the results to come exactly the same way, and it just hasn't. And for a number of reasons, I know Shapovalov's been injured, Bianca Andreescu's been injured again. She's been back, but hasn't had great results since. It's been tough for the Canadians to just muster up a lot of wins. And I don't know if it's, I've been paying attention to it, but I'm not in their camps. I know Andreescu has gone with a new coach. Felix Auger-Aliassime hasn't, and some people are saying that it's about time that he should change his coach. Denis Shapovalov is bouncing around from coaches to coaches. Leilani Fernandez is still with her father. Some people will say that she should get another voice in her box. So it's really been tough for all of them. They just haven't been able to either stay healthy or put wins together. And the expectations that, rightly so, they put on themselves for doing so well, dating back to 2019, 2021, 2022. But the last 2 years have really been a struggle for both of them. It's for all 4 of them, rather, in singles. And, hopefully they can turn it around. Canadian tennis was really peaking at one point, and I think the interest level is still there. But it's tough when all 4 players, who you expect to at least play a couple of matches at the U.S. Open, they're or go deeper, some of them, for Felix and Leilani Fernandez especially, for them not to do that and to lose so easily, quite frankly, to players that they all could have beaten. I know Andreescu has played Jasmine Paolini 3 times in a row at 3 slams, which is totally crazy, including at this tournament, unreal. But, you know, they're players that can be beaten. And I think Leilani Fernandez will be disappointed with the way she's played recently and the way that she lost in 3 sets to a player that she probably should have beaten. Denis Shapovalov has just been all over the place this year and not been good tennis. And Felix Auger-Aliassime lost to a good player, but he lost in straight sets. He should at least be going 4 or 5 with a player like that. So disappointing overall and unfortunate, but that's tennis. That tells you the depth of the tours and how good you have to be just to win a first-round match, whether you're seeded or whether you've had a run or whether you haven't.
Can I get back to Andreescu for a second there? And I know there's a lot of people asking this question. 2019 winner of that tournament. How does she end up with facing a 5 seed in the first round?
Well, it's a combination of things, Bubs. Paolini has had a great year, as we talked about. Won Dubai, got to the French Open final, got to the Wimbledon final, so she's the number 5 seed. And Bianca Andreescu just really hasn't had the matches this year and hasn't been able to get her ranking up into the top 32 in the world. So if you're a top 32 player, you get seeded in the top 32 of the tournament, and then you avoid the better players just because you're seeded. I think the likelihood is you don't get a seed until the 3rd round at earliest if you're in the top 32. So, I mean, totally crazy that she drew Paolini all 3 tournaments at the French, Wimbledon, and the U.S. Open. I mean, that is unheard of to do something like that. You do not see that very often, if at all. And, you know, so unfortunate for her. But the fact that even though she's a U.S. Open champion, that doesn't mean that she gets a higher seed and she gets into the draw and has a better chance of going deeper into the draw. This is the tough part about tennis is, you know, we saw it with Dominic Thiem. He won the U.S. Open a few years ago, and you know, he bowed out in the first round. I mean, he barely got into the tournament. I think he got a wild card to get in, if I remember. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past in tennis. They're interested in what you're doing now, and you're seeing a lot of former great players, slam winners, Wawrinka being one of them. You know, you see these guys who've won slams before. Dominic Thiem has done it, and then they've been down the rankings either because they've been injured or they just can't get back into the top 30 or the top 50 or what have you. So then they draw tough players. Emma Raducanu, same thing. That she won the U.S. Open and she's out in the first round. Just can't get that ranking up high enough to avoid good players, although I thought, you know, she could have played better in her U.S. Open loss. But, you know, this is the sport of tennis, and why it's sometimes cruel is that you can go on these runs for a couple of years, you can get into the top 10, then you suddenly just get an injury, and you're right back down at the bottom, and you have to work your way up. And some players are good at doing that, and other players don't. And Amanda Anisimova is another player who took some time off of tennis and came back and got to the final in Toronto in a 1,000 event, which was remarkable for her. And then, you know, misses Cincinnati, goes to the U.S. Open, and boom, just like that, just out of the first round. So her little run has come to an end. So it's tough. It's tough for the players, and that's basically what happened to Andreescu. Just didn't have the matches and hadn't got a high enough ranking, and so she has to grind it out. And but players can do it. I mean, Alexander Zverev did it on this court. He walked out on crutches, or he walked out in a wheelchair, I suppose, or got pushed out in a wheelchair. You know, was out for 6-8 months, and then came back and had to fight all his way back, and now he's in the top 5 in the world again. So it can be done. That's what makes those players great. So we'll see what Andreescu can do, but it's certainly a tough road to climb when the players just keep getting stronger and stronger. And you think of the 5 years that since she won the U.S. Open, how much deeper the women's field has gotten. It's just gotten deeper and deeper, and it makes it even harder now for players who have won to continue winning. And you just have to beat better and better players. It's tough.
Real quick, give me a winner for the U.S. Open on the men's and the ladies' side singles.
We're going to go out on a limb, Bubs, and we're going to go Djokovic in the men's, and we're going to go Sabalenka in the women's. Going real long shots.
Wow, look at you. You're a real Motor City gambler, eh?
Yeah, real long shots. Look, I mean, the only thing that I would have said Alcaraz, but the Alcaraz ankle turn kind of worried me a little bit. He says he's fine. He won his first round match, but he did lose a set. I don't know. it's something about Djokovic and just all this stuff that just happens. I mean, this would be, I think, 25 for him. This would give him the most ever. I believe it's 25. Would give him the most ever, passing Margaret Court. Again, another monumental record that he would have. I mean, that again would just solidify the 10th time over that he's the greatest of all time. But I just think he's just, he's such a good player, even though he's got a bit of his knees injury is bothering him. Maybe he certainly knows how to get through matches, and he the U.S. Open he's won multiple times, so he knows how to win there. And I just like Sabalenka. I like the way that she plays. I think that she's I think she's a better player than Swiatek, in my opinion. I think she hits the ball harder. Swiatek is a great player, but she's also a clay court specialist. And, she's won other slams before, but she doesn't play as well on the grass. And, I think Sabalenka, what makes her good is that she can play on all four surfaces, or all three surfaces, four if you include indoor, five if you include green clay. But I think that she's just a better player. She's got her serve sorted out for the last couple of years. She hits the ball a ton. And she's just, you see her on the other, she's a force out on the other side of the court. But she's certainly a player that can dominate the sport, and she has been dominating the sports. And I actually think that's why I like her. I just think that she's coming off winning Cincinnati too a couple weeks ago, so that's why I picked her, Bubs.
Hey, John, this has been spectacular, giving us really the inside track on professional tennis and, of course, what's been happening at the Olympics and the Paralympics. Enjoy another couple of weeks in Paris. I mean, this has been probably an outstanding time for you. And thanks for giving us that great shot there of Roland Garros. It's so great to see, and great to see a Canadian like yourself giving us such great coverage. And good luck in your adventure here in Paris.
Bubs, I appreciate it. I went restaurant the other night, highly recommended to me. You had been there. I asked your name, and then they got me right in. So I don't know. You got some pull, and I didn't realize that. It's impressive.
Hey, buddy, thanks so much. We really appreciate the time. All right, folks, there you go. Yet another adventure. Paris on the Sportsline Podcast. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event that deserves some attention, we are certainly here for you. Look us up on many of CHCH's social media platforms, and while you're at it, please comment, subscribe, and blast that thumbs up button, because we appreciate your feedback. For the talented peeps that make this podcast possible, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.